Hey, PWIFA, Play Where Your Feet Are family. Welcome back to another episode. If you don't know me or the podcast, my name is Cameron Dobbs, and I am the host and co-founder of the PWIFA, Play Where Your Feet Are. Everything from the podcast to the speaking engagements to the books to the merchandise, all the above and more. Retreats, y'all, we got everything going on. And if you don't know us, Play Where Your Feet Are basically means to do your best and be your best no matter what and no matter where. Y'all, we are all about living a life full of living on this podcast and bringing others on that do just that. Now, I know this year has been a little interesting for the pod. It has not been as consistent, and that is my bad. However, for good reason. One reason being I moved. So this is my nice little living room if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. I haven't quite figured out how we're doing the podcast yet. So I'm currently just standing here by my lovely couch, but we will figure that out come season 4, which is coming soon. But before we get to 4, we are still on 3. And y'all, today we have a great guest. This is Miss Stephanie Robilio. Y'all, I met her through work. We're going to go through the full story on the pod today, but she is the Chief Clinical Officer at Agape Behavioral Healthcare and so much more. She has published 5 books now. They're all in the description below, y'all. She's an incredible human being, and today she's sharing a little bit of her story, talking about mental health, her new book, Unpack Your Bags, and so much more. Y'all, it's going to be a good conversation, so let's get right into it. Without further ado, enjoy another episode here in Season 3 with Stephanie Robilio. This is the PWIFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast, and I'm your host, Cameron Dobbs. Stephanie Robilio, welcome to the PWIFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast.
Thank you. So grateful to be here.
Steph, we are so excited to have you on. We got connected through actually WSFL, which is so funny because the day that we are recording this is technically my first day officially with WSFL. So it's so cool to already see. Before I even became full-time, full staff, we already made such a good connection. WSFL is already contributing to PWIFA Play Where Your Feet Are, and it's already paying off with dividends because I got to meet you. I got to hear your story a little bit, hear a little bit about what you do. But let's start off with the bases here. So just tell us, how was your day today? What's kind of going on in Stephanie Robilio's life right now?
Thank you. Yes, I had an amazing day. My days are always very busy. As you know, I oversee with an incredible team Agape Behavioral Healthcare. So our days are jam-packed, nonstop, but truly the most rewarding, beautiful days. So today was just a day of healing, breakthroughs, fun, laughter. You know, of course, there's always a little bit of stress in between, but that's the nature of it. But I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. So I had a really good day today.
I love it. And since you went ahead and brought it up, let's touch on it briefly. Go deeper into what is Agape. What do you do with Agape?
So Agape is a behavioral healthcare company. We have the opportunity to serve those struggling with addiction and mental health. And the center of our program is really built around trauma. So we believe strongly that if a person can identify their underlying trauma, then that puts them in a position to really heal from their addiction and their mental health. We offer all levels of care. We currently have 2 locations. We're based here in South Florida, and then our detox is up in Port St. Lucie, and we are super stoked to announce that we will be opening up a mental health residential program really soon too. So we're doing all the things at Agape.
So many incredible things going on. And that was the reason why we met in the first place. That was a story that we touched on a lot when you came into WSFL and inside South Florida. And we talked about what you guys do, what the programs offer, those new locations coming, and everything you guys are doing. But I love that we have you on the podcast today because we get to break down your life a little bit more, as well as your new book. Your new book, Unpack Your Bags, is a self-help guide to inner peace. And it is something that is selling so well. We've talked about that off air, but it's also something that is going to impact so many lives as it has your own. And it already has my own as well. So I want to completely just unpack this book. Let's talk about it. Start us at the beginning. Why the title? Why Unpack Your Bags?
So unpack your bags, right? I think that more often than not, people are going through life carrying so many bags from the past, that emotional weight, right? So if we were to name those bags, we would name them shame, grief, guilt, fear, resentments. depression, anxiety. And so the whole purpose of this book is to help a person really unpack the emotional weight that they're carrying from their past so that they can experience freedom within self and get on the path of inner peace. So that's what inspired the title Unpack Your Bags. I thought that it would just be a clever way of really addressing all the emotions that most of us carry without even realizing.
And who do you think that this book was written for? Who's your target audience with this book?
This book was written for my 24-year-old self. It was written for my 24-year-old self. I can remember being 24 years old and having so much fear. I was ridden with fear, paralyzed by anxiety, full of depression, and I didn't know where to turn. You know, I was living in a very toxic, unhealthy environment, and I needed a way out. And it wasn't until I was able to like just muster up the courage to walk away from it all, and that really put me on the path of self-discovery. But as they say, hindsight's always 2020. So looking back, now I'm 36 years old, so do the math, you know, I've been on this journey for quite some time, but looking back, I would have done anything to have Unpack Your Bags because it's just a simple roadmap that really helps you understand where the emotional weight comes from and actually like normalizes it, that it's okay to struggle with shame, grief, guilt, all these emotions that I name. But I think sometimes people have shame about having shame. Right? We have shame about having shame, and there's no reason for that because it's a natural emotion. So I just really want to normalize our emotional experience, but beyond normalize it, really offer people the practical tools to navigate their way home back to self.
I love it so much. And I love that it comes from a personal place. Like, this isn't just you who studied this, who got degrees in this, who works in this industry, and you're just teaching, teaching, teaching. You're like, no, I lived this. This is my story. It's not just my words. It's not my research, but it's actually my story. And I think I relate to you so much in that with my own book, Play Where Your Feet Are, because it's the same thing. It's like, these are the lessons that I learned personally. This is the fights that I had to go through mentally. This is the battles that I faced on a day-to-day basis. And it's like, maybe it's not your story exactly. Maybe it is, though. And I think that it will be for so many people. And that's where you're going to see that breakthrough that you already see so much in your job, but now you're going to see it, of course, through your writings as well. So it's so special. And just kudos to you for having that vulnerability to also share, because I know it's not easy. And that's really beautiful that you do that.
You know, it's so interesting. So like I had been in therapy for multiple years, you know, since I'm really like probably 13, 14, on and off all the way through 20s, that I still self-disclose that I'm currently in therapy. And what's so interesting is that so many of the old stories of my life that I self-disclose in this book, I thought I had like healed them. I was like, I did this, I went to therapy, I'm good. And as I wrote this book, so much of that old stuff got brought to the surface. And I think that's really important to share today because we can go to therapy, we can go to treatment, we can work with a mentor, we can read every self-help book on the market, we can do all the work. But at the end of the day, our story is still a part of us and we can't outrun our story. No matter how much inner work you do, your story is still your story. It might lose some of its power, you might not be crippled by it, but it's still a part of you. And I think that the old me would have had shame about that I was bothered by things. But today it's just so refreshing to own my story. And I really want that to be a message on this episode, is that own your story. Your story gives hope, it gives inspiration, it gives encouragement. And there's nothing to be afraid of. You know, we all have a past, but I think that we can really take our past, learn the lessons and transform it into purpose. And I think that's really important for people to know that your life has purpose.
Steph, that'll preach. Come on now. Turning your past into your purpose. That's so good. And not only your past into your purpose, but finding peace in the meantime is a huge goal of yours in your own life, but also, again, for your readers as well. You say that this is your self-help guide to inner peace. So I know you're not going to give us the full punchline here, but how do you find this inner peace that you talk about?
I believe inner peace is found in the now. The present moment offers inner peace. And I know sometimes living in the now, it's one of the most difficult things to do because we've been conditioned to be stuck in our past. We often retell the painful stories, we ruminate, we dwell, or you tend to worry, right? Most of us were worrying about what's to come. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If we're dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, no wonder we're not experiencing inner peace. But if you can train your brain to return to the present moment, this is the most generous moment we've been given. And I really believe this is where peace can be found, right here, right now.
That's so good. It's kind of like you're saying play where your feet are or something.
I think I shared with you when I first met you. So at Agape, we always tell our clients, be where your feet are, but don't just be where your feet are. You have to practice where your feet are. And what we mean by that is practice your coping skills in the now. So when I heard that yours is, play where your feet are, it's just amazing.
I love it so much. And it's so good that you say, I mean, it's very much the exact same thing that we're talking about. We're on the exact same page because you're right. It's be where your feet are. Cool, but don't just be. And that's why I specifically
Right.
say play, because I've heard the phrase be where your feet are before, but I don't want to just be. Why would you ever just want to be? Like, I want to play. I want to compete. I want to challenge myself. I want to change. I want to improve. I want to learn. I want to grow. And to me,
Mm.
that's what playing is. And I think you remember too that as a former college athlete myself and a coach and someone who's heavily involved in the sports world, I do think of play as the sense of grind and go after it and all this kind of hardcore tough stuff. But at the same time, I also think of playing like a child playing on a playground when you're having the most fun ever with not a care in the world, and so much joy comes out of that. And that's why I want to play where my feet are. You hear the phrase, and I'm sure you hear it especially because it's related so often to mental health, but the phrase, it's okay to not be okay. And I agree, it's okay to not be okay. But let's get you back to being okay. Like we don't want you to stay not being okay. Any thoughts about that phrase?
Yeah, 100%. I think that I would totally agree that it is okay to not be okay. But I also think that we all have our own responsibility to reclaim power over our situation and do something about it, right? Like change doesn't happen by chance. Change doesn't happen by chance. We must take action to create change. So, sure, if something hard is happening in life, honor your feelings, give yourself the space to not be okay. One of the coping skills I live by is the 5 by 5 rule. And what that means is you stop and ask yourself, is this going to matter in 5 years? Whatever it is, will this matter in 5 years? Usually the answer is no. And so then you say, okay, give yourself 5 minutes to not be okay, and then kind of get over it, move on. And it's not to dismiss what you're experiencing, but it's really to say you're validating your feelings, but you're also saying, okay, I'm going to be empowered and I'm going to allow myself to keep moving. I'm going to move forward now. I'm not going to let this person, place, or thing drag me down.
I love that. And you talked too about how change is not by chance. And
Yes.
so you have to be intentional when you change. It is a choice to change, and it's on you. Yes, everyone can tell you till they're blue in the face that you should change, that you should do this or that or the other. They can encourage you, they can be kind to you, they can say this so gently. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. You are going to be the one that will make the change in your life. It's not by chance. And so knowing that you have this personal story with going through these struggles, what clicked for you to where you were like, okay, enough is enough. I want to make change. Where did that come from in your story?
Yeah, wow, this is a big question, and I could cry. Um, it's when my pain became too great. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Is like you said, people could tell you all day long that you deserve better, that you're worthy of more, but it's not until we reach our own amount of pain where we're like, I can't do this anymore. And that's what happened for me. I would wake up and I would look in the mirror and I didn't even recognize who I was anymore. I was so out of touch with my true self. And so my own pain became too great. And I don't know how, by the grace of God, I mustered up the courage to walk away with like nothing. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had so much fear, but you figure it out. And I think that's really important to highlight, that we are all filled with an infinite amount of wisdom, an infinite amount of wisdom. And if we can only allow ourselves just for a moment to be okay in the fear, knowing that we have this internal roadmap that will never, ever lead us in the wrong way. But we have to still show up when fear is there and trust. You have to have fear and trust at the same time. I think that's really important. I think a lot of people think like, well, I can't have faith or I can't trust because I have fear. And it's like, no, fear and faith can be coexisting. They can coexist. So for me, it was the pain became too great and I just walked away from it all. And when I tell you, I've been blessed beyond measure, and I think it's really a testament to when you take a leap of faith and you trust that the safety net is there. I don't know how, but God, the universe, whatever you call it, it has your back. It has your back.
It's so beautiful. And I mean, you mentioned it several times there. By the grace of God, your faith, whether it's God or the universe or whatever you believe in. You know, we
Mhm.
talked when you were in studio. I heard your name was Agape. And so I had to
Mhm.
ask, oh, what does that stand for? Why is it called agape? And of course, that led us into talking about God's love. So, asking you specifically in your own story here, what has your faith meant to you in all of this, in the book writing, in the process of writing it, in the process of your own journey of
Mm.
getting to be your best self? Where has your faith played the biggest role?
Wow. I mean, having faith, I think, is what has really allowed me to keep going and not give up on myself and not give up on life. And it's just, faith is the hard thing for some people to grasp because you're being asked to believe in the unseen. Right. So it's kind of wild. Like, you want me to believe in something that I can't see and trust this thing that I can't see. But that thing, in my opinion, is a part of you. And so if you can commit to the journey of self discovery, and if you can have the courage to look in, then look deeper, look deeper, look deeper, somehow, some way, you will be led to this place of faith and deep understanding. And for me, it was a book. It was another book that actually got me there. Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I swear by that book. I was 24 years old, and a dear friend knew that I was going through a hard time, and she said, "You're going to read this book, and it's going to change your life." And I literally was like, kind of like, "Screw you," like I'm broken right now. I don't want to read. I want to be left alone. But I read this book, and this book really taught me how to look at within myself, and it put me on the path of discovering faith, what that means to me, because it's a personal experience. There's not one definition for it. And I don't think I'd be where I am today without it. I really don't. I
It's
really
so
don't.
it's so beautiful. I love it so much, and I agree completely. And I agree too that you talk about it being so personal, because that's true. And so often we talk about how, being a Christian, having faith in Jesus Christ, it's so much more of a relationship than a religion. And
Mm,
I think that's, you nailed it there. That's why it is so personal, because it's your own story. You find God in different ways than I might find God. And that's okay, because it's a relationship, not a religion. It's how you personally interact with him and how you see him and how you encounter him. And it's awesome to see that he's been encountering you on your entire journey. And what else is a journey is, you say your book is a journey. And so I
mm.
want to ask you, why do you describe your book as a journey for the readers?
Because this book truly takes you on this inward transformative experience. It's not just like you're reading it and just going through the pages. Imagine you're sitting down having a conversation with me from my heart to yours. Like, that's really what the book is. And so many people who have read it, they say, they're like, "Steph, I feel like you're just talking to me. I feel like it's you when you're teaching group at Agape, or I feel like it's you when we're in session together." Like, I wrote it literally like I would talk to you,
I love
literally like I would talk to you. So it's very personal, and it's just like a step-by-step guide of just like, let's chat. Let's unpack your bags, with no shame, no guilt, none of that. Just a lot of grace, a lot of understanding, a lot of acceptance, and having fun along the way.
I think that's so important too, that you talk about almost the casual aura about
Mhm.
this. That so often when we think of therapy or mental health or these tough conflicts, resolutions, all the things that you have to do to become a better self, because they're not easy. It's hard to become a better self. We often think of it as so scary, and we do have this fear and this shame. But the way you approach this is so welcoming,
Mm.
because you are just like, let's sit down and unpack our bags and we'll talk face to face, and it's us getting coffee with another. So talk about, just from the perspective of a mental health professional yourself, if anyone is hearing this and thinking, maybe I should, one, read this book, but maybe I should, two, think about going to therapy or going back to therapy or
Mhm.
doing something to better my mental health, what encouragement do you have for them to just make this transition seem so seamless, easy, and welcoming? How can you help them out?
Yeah, I think it's just about taking the first step, understanding that first step could potentially change your life. A lot of times, just as you said, Cam, people think going to therapy or committing to treatment is like this big task. And we at Agape, we have a whole different perspective on it. It's not meant to be this hard, scary thing. Yes. Is it uncomfortable? Is there challenges? Of course. But there's also uncomfortability and challenges in staying the same,
Yeah.
right? And not getting help. So you kind of have to pick your heart. But for us, it's all about just embracing the new day as an opportunity to get better and allowing yourself to be open to the support and the love that surrounds you, and kind of making light of life. Because If not, it's very easy to stay stuck, right? It's very easy to stay stuck, especially if you let that internal narrative tell you that it's too difficult to get better, or that it's embarrassing to admit you're struggling, or the fear of judgment. So at some point, you kind of have to push all that away and still make that first step. It really just comes down to that. There's no right time, there's no wrong time. It's just about you getting to that place where you recognize you are so worthy and deserving of feeling your best.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's your own personal story of the burdens got too heavy because it's
Right.
easy. It's easy to hide. It's easy to keep it all in. It is, at least in my opinion, because I am someone who's not very vulnerable naturally.
Mhm.
I try to be tough, thinking that tough with the quotation marks is that I hide all my emotions and I never share what I'm struggling with and all the things like that. But it is so much better, maybe not easier, but it's so much better to open up, to share. And I think over time, like you said, you see it's worth it. And that's at the end of the day, that's what you're going for, is you're going for a life full of living. That's what we call playing where your feet are. It's a life full of living. We know that Jesus Christ came down to this planet to give us an abundant life, a life full of living. It's not one that is to be stressed. It's not one that is to be worried. It's not one that is to be anxious. It's not one that is to be sad or depressed. Like, that's not why we're on this earth for. Yes, life is hard. Yes, life is tough, but we're tough too. And we're not tough in the sense that we hide all of our emotions and never do anything. We're tough in the sense that we actually will speak up, that we will change, that we know that
Mhm.
change is not by chance, and that we have to be intentionally. And that's what being tough is, knowing that you have some problems, but you're worth fixing them because you're worth having a great life. You deserve having a great life and you deserve having a long life because you deserve
100%.
using your past for purpose because you're here on this planet for a purpose. So, Stephanie, I love everything that you're saying. And I know the readers and listeners do too, and they will too once they finish all of this. So, I want to ask you, looking at your book, when readers finish, they turn that final page, what's a major takeaway that you want them to have once they're done reading?
Man, there's so many big takeaways. But I would say the biggest takeaway is I think by the end of it, people really go, wow, all along it was me that could give myself permission to set myself free. Like that's what it is, that you are the person who can set yourself free. You don't need anyone else's permission. It's up to you and only you. And I just feel so strongly that by the end of it, every reader is just going to be so connected to their true self. They're going to be living aligned with all of their dreams, all of their goals, all of their desires. Fear might still be there, but they're connected to that inner wisdom that I spoke about earlier. And they're just fearless in the pursuit of doing what sets their soul on fire, like truly fearless.
So good. There is a verse in the Bible that talks about it's Matthew 28:8, I believe, and it's when the woman at the tomb see that Jesus's body was gone and raised from the dead, and it says that they are frightened, but they ran full speed ahead. And I think
Mm,
that goes back to you talking about how these things can coexist. You can be frightened, but you can still run full speed ahead with purpose, with passion, with excitement, with fervor for this life. Yeah, you might still have fear. You might still have anxiety. You might still have sadness. You might have bad days because honestly, you probably will. That is the reality of this life. But again, that's okay. Just keep going. It's one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and day by day and brick by brick, and you'll be going before you know it. I love it. That's so, so good. You talk about that takeaway that you want. How about a specific call to action? What is an action you want your readers to take when they finish?
I want them just to stay in action every single day. That's the most important part. And I see that because so oftentimes people will read a book or they'll go to a workshop and you learn new knowledge, and knowledge is amazing. But if you don't apply the things that you've learned, knowledge is actually quite useless, right? It's like going into a library and somebody says, hey, here's the book that could potentially change your life. And you just stare at it. You don't ever really pick it up and read it, right? Like it's that actionable step that can change your life. So, what I want people to do is, yes, read the book, but don't just read the book, apply the book. Like I give you everything you need within this book to really heal from past pain, release the worry of the future, and get on the path of inner peace one now at a time.
Amen to that. Couldn't have said it better myself, and retweet to all the above. Stephanie, it's so good. And it lines so well with play where your feet are because again, playing is an action. It's not being. We want to play. And it's so important to play. In fact, the last chapter of my book is literally called Vamos. Like, let's go. Come on now, let's
I
go.
love it.
Because that's the thing. It's like all 13 chapters before this last one, they're great. They're full of wisdom. But again, it's all worth nothing if you don't do anything with it. I studied meteorology in college. That was not my major. I had one meteorology class. Let me clarify. I had one meteorology class. But in that class, we talked about how, all this information of storms and weather patterns and everything that we're given, it's ultimately useless if we don't take heed of the information and then tell others. It's the same thing with life. It's the same thing with the wisdom that we learn, the lessons that we learn. It's all useless if we don't actually take heed of it. We tell others and we take action as well. So I love it so much. Everyone who's listening needs to go get Unpack Your Bags immediately right now. We're still talking. So as we're talking, just go to Amazon. You can look it up now. You'll find it easily. Go ahead and order it. It'll already be shipping to your house by the time we're done with this episode. So we're going to keep going now. But Stephanie, we talk about the commonalities between what you preach on, what I preach on, what our passions are. So with Unpack Your Bags, with mental health, with everything you're doing, agape and more, and play where your feet are from my side, I got to ask you, what does play where your feet are mean to you?
I think play where your feet are to me means be your best self in the now. Do what you have to do to become your best self in the now, right? Again, I say that word action over and over, but it's all about taking action in the now and just doing whatever you have to do to make it happen. Make it happen.
And we've shouted you out already for working with Agape, but I think that's such a beautiful example too. If you're using your own past, you're using your own passions, you're using your own talents, your skills, your wisdom, your education to make an impact in your job, in your workplace. You're seeing something that could so easily just be seen as a job, but you're using everything you have that has built you as a human being, and you're now impacting others for it. So I see you as a great example of playing where your feet are yourself, and you're continuing to impact those to do the same. So for those that are watching and listening to you and reading your book and thinking this girl is a great example of all of this, of playing where your feet are and more, what advice do you have to them who are wanting to model what you do, who you are, and how you play where your feet are, but maybe they're not sure exactly where to start? What would you say?
I would say be true to you. That was like the thing growing up from my mom, and I'll never forget hearing her say it, be true to you. And I mean that sincerely from my heart. I think that it's so easy to compare yourself. It's so easy to judge yourself. But at the end of the day, you are uniquely beautiful you. And if you can just honor your true self and be true to you, meaning follow your own heart's desires. I feel like we've been all blessed with our own unique gifts, talents, and abilities. Don't lose sight by comparing yourself to somebody else. Trust your process, trust the unfolding of your life, and tap into those gifts. They were given to you for a reason, and live them out, play them out. The world needs it.
Oh, we could have a whole nother podcast episode on comparison. My goodness.
Oh my
Comparison.
goodness.
Comparison is the thief of joy, and that'll preach alone. But so, so good, Stephanie. Any other words more on comparison while we're on it?
Just don't do it. Right? It's like
Point blank, period.
Yeah,
It's a
just
bad
don't
idea.
do it. It's exactly as you said. It really is a thief of joy. And I think that when we compare, we're blocking ourselves from really tapping into our authentic self. And I think we could talk about this for hours, but there's this protective factor there. I think that sometimes people are afraid of really evolving into their best self. So we just compare because we know if we compare, it actually keeps us small. And there's some safety in that. I'll just stay small because it feels safer. But part of our life is to step into the unknown and to evolve and embrace the unknown, right? Like I said earlier, like just go head on with fear and invite faith to come with you.
So beautiful. Steph, this was such a good episode. We're not quite done yet, but I just want to thank you so much for hopping on and joining the family here at Play Where Your Feet Are. Before we wrap up, I want everyone to know exactly where they can find all of your things that you're up to. So take this time. There is no shameless plugs. It is completely free. We would love to hear it. Where can we find you? Where can we find your books? Where can we find Agape information? Where can we continue to keep up with you?
Amazing. I love it. Shameless self-promoting. I say it all the time. So you can find me. It's very easy. All my social handles are at Stephanie Robilio. And then my website is stephanierobilio.com. That has all my books. My podcast is on there, which is the Mindful Living podcast, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It's on every platform that you can think of. And then you can find us at Agape at www.agapetc.com. And again, we're located here in South Florida, and we also have our North locations.
I love that you brought up the fact too, y'all hear this, that this is not just her first book. This is your fourth book, right? Is that correct?
My fifth.
Your fifth book. Okay, you've had
Yes.
4 of this. Yes. So this is her fifth book, y'all. She has mentioned to me before she thinks it's her best or her favorite. But y'all check out all of her books that she has and check out her podcast too. If you're listening to this one, you're probably a fan of podcasts. And so she is another podcaster that you should be tuned into. So Stephanie, just dive quickly into what is your podcast about?
Oh man, the podcast offers so much. So I bring everything related to mental health and wellness, dedicated to having super real, honest conversations just about everything that you can think of as it relates to mental health and wellness. But the real intention is how to help you get on the path of living a mindful life, which again is just live your life in the now and embrace the inner peace that's waiting for you.
I love it. Y'all go check it out. Everything that she's up to. We'll be sure to plug everything below in the description as well, so you guys can easily click and find Stephanie and all she's doing. But I want to give the floor to you for a couple final more moments of the pod. I want to ask you 2 more questions with this.
Cool.
So my first question I'm going to ask you, because we have to take advantage of having a mental health professional on the podcast.
Okay.
So what is something that is very practical, whether it's a breathing method, whether it's a gratitude journal, whatever it might be, what's something practical that we can all do to better our lives and our mental health in our day-to-day life?
There's so many things I could say on this, but I would think that the go-to for me is affirmations. I think affirmations are so easy. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Everybody has access to affirmations, right? So an affirmation is something that you come up with, such as I am worthy. Today is going to be a great day. I am more than my anxiety. So for me, I would recommend that every morning you start your morning with at least 5 affirmations. I personally like to write my affirmations down, but then I read them out loud. I think there's a lot of power in affirming what it is that you want to affirm out loud. So affirmations, take them with you, carry them with you, use it.
So good. I will be doing my affirmations tomorrow morning. I can guarantee you that. And just for you and for myself, obviously for myself, because we're getting better here. All right. My last question for you is the question I always leave everyone with, and it is to give you the floor one more time for any more gold nuggets you might have, because I know you have a lot, and this is just a little sliver of a piece of your life and your brain and your heart that you're sharing with us. So for the final time, any final words for the podcast?
I would just really want to say thank you all for tuning in. And I hope today and always you just know how beautiful and worthy you are. I think that's so important. If there's any negative beliefs that show up, challenge them, reframe them, and just continue to affirm you are worthy, because that's the God's honest truth. You're all so worthy. And I think if you can carry the belief of I am worthy, you will do so many incredible things in your life. So many incredible things in your life.
If no one told you today, you are so loved, you are so worthy, and we love having you guys as listeners, as part of the family. And Stephanie, now we love having you as part of the family too. So thank you again for hopping on to the PWIFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. We so appreciate you sharing your heart, your feelings, your book, and everything you do with us. And I just know that it's going to continue to change so many lives, as it has already changed mine. And y'all, by the way, I know we're going to plug everything, but follow her on Instagram too, because she has great Instagram content that is fun, that is so educational, and it is a joy to see it every single day. So shout out to you, Stephanie, and all that you do, all that you are, all that you will be, and how you just continue impacting the world.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you again for having me.
Of course. Thanks for hopping on, and have a good one.
You too.
Okay. How good was Steph? So good, right? I told y'all she is incredible. Y'all, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you want to stay connected to Steph, everything is below in the description. Her book, her social media, all the above. Agape information too. Y'all stay tuned. They even just launched a new facility. And y'all, I had a chance to go on grand opening and it is stunning. So y'all check it out. And of course, while you're at it, checking out all the things online, make sure to check out us, PWIFA Play Where Your Feet Are. Whether it is, like I said, the podcast, whether it is merchandise, the book. We have book number 2 coming soon. Stay tuned, stay tuned. It's so exciting. And so much more, y'all. Retreats, camps, clinics, speaking engagements, all the things. You know the gist by now. It's all linked below and you can find it all online. But thank you once again for listening and watching another episode of the PWIFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Dobbs. Stay blessed and play where your feet are. Bye.